Sometimes life's burdens can take their toll on your emotional well-being. If you or a loved one is struggling, know that you are not alone. South Texas Health System Behavioral can help you cope with depression, manage feelings of anxiety, regain control of mood swings, and recover from substance use disorders. Our staff is available 24/7, offering the quality and compassionate inpatient and outpatient care you need to overcome life's challenges. South Texas Health System Behavioral, where your mental health is our priority. Greetings and welcome to our latest Let's Talk Mental Health webinar. I'm Tom Castañeda, the System Director of Marketing and Public Relations for South Texas Health System. On behalf of STHS Behavioral, thank you for joining us. Your mental health is essential. It shapes how you think, feel, and connect with others, and it plays a vital role in how you navigate everyday life. So to help Rio Grande Valley residents make mental health a priority, STHS Behavioral hosts these monthly Let's Talk Mental Health webinars. Through education on common challenges and practical guidance on managing them, we hope to reduce stigma, encourage open conversation, and empower individuals to seek professional support when they need it most. Now, in this installment, we'll be discussing managing stress. Stress is a normal part of life. It's a natural fight or flight response to dangers or challenges like work, exams, or life changes. Short-term stress can be motivating and help improve performance and build resilience. Unfortunately, chronic stress can be harmful to your health, increasing the risk of heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, depression, anxiety, digestive disorders, and weakened immune function. Approximately 75% of U.S. adults report stress-related physical or emotional symptoms, according to the American Institute of Stress, and 49% say they experience significant stress daily. Now, managing stress effectively is critical to protecting both physical and mental health. Along with lowering the risk of chronic illness, it can help improve focus and resilience, prevent burnout, and promote better sleep, mood, and interpersonal relationships. So to learn more about managing stress, we're joined by Bob Cooper, a licensed clinical social worker who serves as the Director of Utilization Review at STHS Behavioral. Bob, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
Now, we are talking stress. This is something that we all deal with. You look at the numbers, 50 to 75% of American adults right now report significant chronic or increasing stress. I think we lived in a stressed out society, unfortunately.
Always. And people talk about eliminating stress. That is completely impossible. There's always going to be stress because of the way that life is. Stress also could be a good thing. But with rising gas prices and things in the news and everything else, it can make us really, really have chronic stress.
Especially right now when we're dealing with a little bit of that uncertainty. You mentioned the gas prices, the crisis in Iran, and everything that is happening around us. It's hard to deal with just the daily stress when you know that that's topped with everything that's happening around us as well.
Absolutely. And so oftentimes when we look at the news, and sometimes we may watch the news too much in the wrong places, it can make us feel worse because they lead with the things that are stress, because it's oftentimes what we are interested in.
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to managing stress, it isn't rocket science. There are simple steps that we can take to sort of control, tame that stress, right?
Absolutely. And the funny thing is that a lot of people who come into counseling absolutely know what they need to do to help themselves. It's just sometimes getting started or seeing it more clearly is difficult.
And when it comes to stress, is handling it differently for children versus adults, or are some of those same skills necessary no matter your age?
Oh yes, all of these skills translate across all ages, child, adolescent, adult, geriatric, and it's just that the stressor is different.
So the stress for a child is starting school for the first time or making new friends. For an adult, it may be going to college for the first time, an 18-year-old who's just graduated, going out into the world, going to college for the first time. For adults, then you get into new job or job stress, performance-related stress, things like that. So obviously, we all have different things that cause stress in our lives.
Right, and all of those things that you mentioned are phase of life problems which have significant stress. When I was working back in Kentucky, we would oftentimes see great rises in inpatient mental health admissions for children and adolescents when they changed schools.
Wow.
Just because the change was so great. But really, stress is here all the time. It's not just starting school, it's homework for tomorrow.
And with stress, I know I deal with stress with public speaking, but you can I've learned to be able to use that stress and help it with performance. So you can turn that stress into a positive.
Absolutely. And we'll see in just a moment that a whole lot of stress is actually very positive for us. It's how we grow.
All right, well, you have a great presentation that you've put together, so let's get started.
Okay, great. So everybody experiences stress. We just talked about that, but we always think of stress in a negative way. However, stress is much of the time very positive. When you're working out at the gym, when you're going for a run, you're inducing stress onto your body, and that's what makes your muscles grow and build your endurance and your stronger physical health. Stress is also the way that the trees and the plants grow. When they're blown side to side by the wind, that induces stress on their, and that's what helps them grow stronger. So stress really is just your body's physical and emotional reaction to changing situations. So there are two main types of stress. There's acute stress, which is right now. It's very short term. Imagine a child who's got the midterm exam coming up. That's acute stress. It's short, it can be really intense, but it's in the here and now. Chronic stress, on the other hand, is more damaging. It's when we experience similar stresses over time. Imagine someone who's witnessing or being the victim of abuse in their home or living with an alcoholic parent. They see these stresses all the time, and over time those stresses elevate or escalate into trauma, and it can change the way that we view the world and interact with other people. So chronic stress, as Tom mentioned in his intro, can lead to a lot of medical problems. Insomnia is very common. Gastrointestinal problems are common. You have a child that really doesn't want to go to school for whatever reason, all of a sudden they have a stomach ache. Very common. Headaches can be common. It can impact negatively your immune system, and you can catch cold or flu more easily. It can cause, over the long haul, chronic stress can lead to increased risk of stroke, increased risk of heart attacks. It oftentimes leads to obesity. And we can manage stress well, or we can manage stress poorly. So what happens is that we are confronted with a stressor. It's just something different, no more than that. And what we try to do in the moment is we try to deal with that stress. And so we reach into our tool bag and use skills that we've tried before to deal with that stress. Sometimes we have positive coping skills and they may work, or we have positive coping skills that don't work. Unfortunately, sometimes we delve into negative coping skills. One of the most common ones is substance misuse, but also domestic violence can be a response to stress. And so it's very difficult in the long term to overcome negative coping skills. We built them over stress, and it's going to take a pretty large stress for us to make that change. So stress can lead to forgetfulness. It can lead to, as I said before, headaches, loss of focus and concentration. Oftentimes when we get stressed at work, we're trying to do multiple things at once. And as well as we may believe that we do at managing multiple tasks, we're not as good as we think we are. It can lead to depression and anxiety, but I can't stress this enough. sorry about that, no pun intended. Anxiety and stress are not the same thing. Anxiety is an outcome oftentimes of stress, but they're not. Anxiety is a mental disorder. Stress is something that we just encounter in the course of our daily life. The other hand of trauma is resilience. And I'll tell you, I've been to a lot of trainings before where they talk about trauma and the effects of trauma over time, but they give short shrift to resilience. Resilience is the absolute opposite. It's how we bounce back. It's how we overcome stress, and with chronic stress, how we overcome trauma. So oftentimes we think of resilience as being innate. We think about a person's temperament. And you think about a child who seems nervous all the time, and they say, well, they've always been nervous. And some of that can be inborn. And sometimes we see children that are able to overcome stress. If you have a family of multiple children who are taken into foster care, some of them adapt better than others. And oftentimes we think, well, they're born more resilient. But it doesn't work that way all the time. Resilience is something that we can develop over time with exercise, just like any other exercise. So, ways to develop your resilience, okay? None of these are going to work for everybody. It's trial and error on this. But the first one is to practice true gratitude. Now, we're really good at gratitude in November. The rest of the year, not so much. And we have to look at it in multiple ways. First of all, we need to be thankful for the things that we do have in our life, the positive things. Sometimes we have to be thankful for dodging bullets. Oftentimes you'll see young women who are really torn up because their boyfriend just broke up with them. Down the road you may learn, boy, that was a blessing. And you have to be grateful for that when it happens. Sometimes, if you left early for work, you missed a car accident or just the extra red light. You have to be grateful for these small things sometimes and understand that we have been blessed sometimes by some of the people that have been put in our pathway, some of the people that we've met and everything else. I do counseling on the side, and I'm really grateful when somebody comes in and is willing to share their story with me. Sometimes it's very helpful, sometimes not so much, but I'm grateful that they came in and gave me their trust and their secrets. That's one of the main jobs of a therapist, is to take and keep secrets. When you think about gratitude as well, you think about the people that had an impact on your life in the past. One time when I was feeling actually kind of low, I wrote emails to people that had changed the way that I see therapy and helping other people. It was surprisingly uplifting to be able to write and say, you know what, I remember when I studied under you at the university, and it really changed the way that I view the world. You have to see those kinds of things sometimes. The second thing about developing resilience is something I talk about all the time in therapy, and it's new things. New things. You have to try new things, and that's how you learn new things. Learning new things is the second best thing, research-based, about having a positive outcome in your life. The first is gratitude, the second one is learning new things. You're forced to do that sometimes at work and everything else, but what you really should try and do is try and learn new things that are interesting to you. There's a ton of podcasts out there about all different kinds of things. You can listen to a podcast about something that's interesting. If you're in college right now, you have elective classes you can take. Take something that's interesting so that you'll stay engaged in it and everything else. You can also incorporate this into what you already like. I had a client that came to see me, and I was talking about trying something new. He really, really liked to cook. That was his big thing. And so I told him to go to H-E-B and buy some chard. And he looked at me kind of funny. He said, chard? Yes, chard is a leafy green. You've seen it before. It's dark green. It's got bright red stems. Take it home, learn how to cook it. It's about $2 and it feeds about 3 or 4. But you learn how to cook something new, and that learning process can be something positive for you. On the photo there's the Kentucky hot brown. You don't see them down here, but if you go up north and you see one of those, try something new. When you go to your restaurant, try something different. If you have never tried it before, try tripas. It's a very different taco. Okay, third is laugh at least once a day. I think that everybody should have a YouTube playlist that has a list of clips of funny videos that just make you laugh. They don't have to make anybody else laugh. They have to make you laugh. And you need a list because you can't watch the same one over and over again. Also, we need to learn to laugh at ourselves. You know, when we were kids up north, you don't see ice here very much. But if you slipped and fell on the ice, it was kind of embarrassing and everything else. It wasn't nearly as bad when you were able to laugh with your friends and everything else. We all make mistakes. We need to be able to laugh at them. Okay, use your positive social supports. And I talk about this quite a bit when we talk about the holiday blues and everything else. The important thing is the positive supports. You don't want to go around that Tia that you don't want to see. You don't want to go around that really annoying cousin that drives you up a wall. You have to be around people that make you feel positive, people that are supportive, some of the people that will listen to you and understand how you're doing. You don't have to talk to them about your problems or your stressors or everything else. You just need to have some sort of sense of community and have somebody to talk to. Several years ago, I really wanted to go to Las Vegas. I had the opportunity and everything else. I didn't go because I didn't have anybody close to me at the time. I'd just moved to Texas shortly before then to go with me. It's kind of a shared experience, if you know what I mean. There are some things you can do alone. I'd been to Vegas before. It's the kind of place where you see and experience things and then you talk about them afterwards. That's true about a lot of trips and everything else. You want to talk about what you saw and see different opinions on what you experienced. You remember seeing somebody that came to the family reunion with that crazy hair and that odd clothing and everything else, and everybody's whispering behind them. It's not always the most positive thing to do, but it is that kind of shared relationship kind of thing. Okay, learn to be optimistic. It's very difficult, especially with the news today and the way that our lives change, to accept things positively. As I said before, news leads with the negative. If it bleeds, it leads. And they always want to stir up controversy so that people are talking and people are listening. We need to look at the positive sides of things sometimes, if there is one. We have to look for it. And if we can't find it, we need to look somewhere else for something that is positive. There's a podcast on YouTube where on Thursday they only talk about positive news. The rest of the week, it's about politics and there's always something negative. But on Thursday, nope, they look for stories to find something positive about the world. You can look at pictures of your children when they were younger and everything and reminisce on memories and stuff like that. You have to learn that life is okay and it's not always terrible. And in doing so, you have to realize that sometimes we fail and we fall, but we get up and we persevere and we persist. There are a lot of people that are negative about their life because they don't win big enough. You don't play the Super Bowl every day. It happens on one day of the year, and you have to work toward that goal. And in working toward that goal, you celebrate small wins. Sometimes when you're feeling really rough and you want to call in sick, but you tough it out and you go to work. You made it. Give yourself a break and celebrate that. Sometimes, I got a D on my last test. I got a C on this one. I'm making improvements. You got to celebrate that. If you were able to have a difficult phone call or talk to somebody that you didn't want to talk to and you got through it, you have to celebrate that. You have to pay attention to the things that are going well in your life. Otherwise, you can just spiral out of control. You're trying to overcome challenges, and so you have to see what's going well. I went to the luchas the other night. They were awful, except for one. I did have one good lucha, and I got a couple of good pictures. You have to see the positive in everything. Okay, I went the other way. The other thing you can do is record things. Several years ago, my wife was a hospice social worker, and I was thinking about people that I had lost in the past. I lost my dad when I was 13. I'm named after him. I was his favorite kid, truly. I can't remember his voice in my head. I lost my mom about 9 years ago, and I can barely remember her voice. My brother about 6, and I can see them all. I can't hear them all. And so I started keeping videos and recording stories. And so all of my living brothers and sisters have recorded a story for me, and it's stored online. And they're the kind of stories that we would tell at Thanksgiving or Christmas when we all got together. And so if we lose one of them, we still have their voice and we still have their shared experiences and their stories. So that was one of the things that my wife started talking to her hospice patients about. As people get older and we start to wane, we need to make sure that we're preserving the stories of our youth. We're preserving our heritage, our legends, and our recipes. So we need to have that kind of thing that we can look back on. You can record in a journal if you like to do that thing, or a diary. I don't use it very much in therapy because I'm not going to read it. It's more for the client's use. But if you don't like writing, you can use a recording app on your phone and save it. People who suffer with anxiety, oftentimes I'll tell them, you need to record when you're feeling really anxious so that you can remember what your triggers were and what made you feel this way. What you're looking for is understanding and insight into what causes all of this stress, how you dealt with it, what worked, what didn't work, because things aren't going to work all the time. And so you don't want to keep going back to the well on something that's not helping you. You want to work with new things and new strategies, and hopefully things will work out best. Also, you make to-do lists, but there's a caveat to that, and it's very important. Your to-do list should have no more than 5 things. If you've got more than 5 things on your list, you're asking for trouble. So I was working at a psychiatric hospital years ago, and I would start with 3 things on my list first thing in the morning, and then I would see what happened overnight or over the weekend, and that list would grow, and sometimes it would get to 25 and 30 things I had to get done by the close of business. Over time, that gets untenable, and you start to feel bad about things that you didn't get done. So 5 things, no more. And there's a lot of satisfaction in crossing those things off and feeling like you're getting things done. And it can build momentum for the next thing. But again, only 5 things. And you should start with something that you have to do every day. So first things first, cross things off your list. Just don't make it overwhelming. You should reach out spiritually. If you are a religious person, you can follow your faith. If you're not a religious person, you can try meditation or you can explore faith. That's entirely up to you. The world is out there, and there are a lot of things that happen in our life that we really don't have a good explanation for. There are things that science can't help us with, and sometimes faith fills that gap. Sometimes it's nice to talk to somebody who's not necessarily a body. They won't always talk back, but they'll always listen. My mother used to tell me that God isn't always there when you want Him, but He's always there on time. That was something that helped me at the time. Meditation, on the other hand, is trying to get in touch with something outside of yourself. It's a little bit more labor intensive. It takes work to meditate. However, it's very rewarding, and research shows that it helps quite a bit in reducing your stress. Okay, things to do in order to be more resilient. And the first thing is to be active. Resilience and health will not come knocking at your door. Stress and illness will. They'll come looking for you. So you have to be active. You have to be an active part of your life. Otherwise, you're not really living. You have to connect with other people. It doesn't have to be your family. Can be your friends, but you do have to be connected with other people. About the only people that can do that are hermits, and we don't hear very much about those anymore. You need to schedule me time, and this is very important. Use a calendar, use an alarm, schedule time for yourself to do your thing. It has to be your thing. If you are struggling sometimes with your kids, you don't want to sit down and watch a kids show with your kid in me time. That's the kids' time. You need to do something for you, something that's rewarding, that you like to do, just for you. You schedule those appointments and you keep them, and you make sure that the people around you can support you in keeping those. Your resilience and your ability to fight stress is about you. Your self-confidence, your self-esteem is self. It's about you. You have to take time for yourself. It is not selfish. It's absolutely necessary. Next, you have to focus on agency. We run into problems a lot of times because we want to take control of our life and the situations around us. But oftentimes we don't have agency. There's nothing we can do about it. That's actually the cause of hopelessness and anger, is the lack of control. We get really angry when we're driving because some idiot cut us off in traffic. But what can you do about that? Nothing. So it makes you angry. Or you have problems at work because the boss is asking you to do some things that really you can't accomplish. What can you do? Yell at your boss? No. It makes us angry. It makes us feel a little bit less hopeless. So you have to make sure that you're focusing on things that you can control. Last is to help others. We get a lot of satisfaction about helping others, and it doesn't have to be a big deal. You imagine when you're sitting in the bathroom with your small child and you're washing their face and getting the chocolate off their mouth and everything else. It's a small task of helping somebody else, and you get great satisfaction out of that. Don'ts. If you want to build resilience, don't try and do everything all at once. You have to pace yourself. We only have so much time and so much energy in the day. That's a big part of our stress, is we don't have enough time and enough energy to do everything we want to do. So just make sure that you pace yourself. Do not use substances to cope. As I mentioned before, if you use that to cope and it becomes one of your main tools, undoing that is super difficult. And if you know someone that misuses substances, you know how frustrating it is to live around them because they know they need to change, but they feel like they can't. It's awful. And last is don't suffer alone. As I said before, you need to connect with other people. It doesn't necessarily need to be somebody that you even know. There are anonymous chat lines online where you can just chat with somebody and you don't have to give them your personal information. It's just somebody that you can complain to. It doesn't matter necessarily who you're connected with, as long as you're connected and you don't feel alone. So, considerations. First of all, reduce your to-do list as much as you can. Strip it down. We have an 8 to 12 hour workday. We can't squeeze 16 hours of work in there. It just can't be done. And there are some of the things that we try and work on sometimes that are just too much. Our goals have become unattainable. And so sometimes we just have to surrender the goal and move on to something that's more realistic. Reducing your workload can resolve a whole lot of stress. If you can delegate, delegate. If you can just hand something over and say, look, I can't do this right now. I can't is very powerful. No is very powerful. You can't take everything. We're not Atlas. Okay, second, cut out things that add to your stress. So at least one day a week, you shouldn't watch the news. At least one day a week. At least a second day of the week, you should watch news from somewhere else, like Reuters, the Associated Press, or the BBC, somebody that is not telling you something from some political leaning. If you are using substances, consider a sober day, sober 2 days. You start with 1 day and you build upon that kind of a thing. If you're a smoker, try and smoke a little bit less. It's called harm reduction, and not asking you to quit everything, just try and smoke a little bit less. And the person that you don't need around you, block them for a day or more if you can. Just for a day. Just take a break. I can't deal with this right now. Okay, walk away from social media. Get out. There's a whole lot of things on social media that frustrate us, that make us angry, that are just as bad, if not worse, than the news. And a whole lot of it's fake anyway. If it's bothering you, walk away from it. Just for a day. Give yourself a break. Take a rest. Also, there are social media things like TikTok that rob us of time that we really don't have. Have you ever sat down and looked at videos and then all of a sudden it's an hour later and you wonder, good Lord, where did the time go? Take a break, just a little bit. As I said before, keep a very brief to-do list. 5 items, no more, and then cross those things off. At the end of every day, you should be able to say, here are a few things that I got done. Because a lot of times when we're super stressed, we don't feel like we're getting anything done. Allow for mistakes and imperfections. When I was in high school, in my high school, an A was 93 to 100. At the end of the grading period, it didn't matter if you had 93s, it didn't matter if you had 100s. It was all an A. You don't have to do perfect work all the time. It's just not going to happen. And sometimes you have to accept a B. You have to figure out what your acceptable level is. And then that's what you're shooting for, your acceptable level, and not necessarily exceeding all goals. It's a funny thing when you have evaluations at work, nobody's going to give you 100 all the time because there's always room for improvement. Next is to prioritize self-care. You need to take care of yourself. And especially if you're somebody else's caregiver, if you're a parent or you have somebody that's ill that you have to help take care of, you have to be in a physical, mental, and emotional place that you can help them. And the only way that you can do that is taking care of yourself. Dance for a minute. Watch a peppy video on YouTube. Go feed the ducks. Do something small. It doesn't have to be a big deal. You just have to do something for yourself consistently. Even when you're feeling well, continue to do self-care things. They make a big deal when you have a bacterial infection, when you're prescribed antibiotics. Make sure that you take the entire course of the medication because we are very prone to stopping any sort of treatment once we start to feel better. Self-care has to become routine. It has to be a part of your life consistently. And it has to be something that's enjoyable to you. Over the course of my adult life, I have owned 3 exercise bicycles. In a very short time after acquiring them, they became clothes hangers. It's probably good for people that can do that. It's not my thing. I can ride an exercise bicycle for, I don't know, a day, 2 days, something like that. It's boring. It's not for me. If you can do it, great, excellent. But you have to find something that you're willing and enjoy doing, otherwise you won't keep it up. Tom?
Wow, that is awesome, great information that you have for us. Now, you've practiced in Kentucky and you've practiced in the Rio Grande Valley now. Are there any cultural differences that you've noted when it comes to how we deal with stress? Is the Latino community when it comes to stress? Because I know growing up, I heard get over it a lot of times. So I'm sure there's universality when it comes to stress, but are there any cultural differences that you've noticed?
Actually, they're very similar. The personality is very similar. The only thing that's really different between the part of Kentucky that I'm from and the Rio Grande Valley is in Kentucky they were much more direct.
Okay.
Here they will talk around things a little bit more. In Kentucky they'd say, you know what, you need to do this. Very directive. Whereas here there's a lot more discussion rather than being directive.
So sort of going around the subject a few times, making a few laps before you get to the point.
Yes.
Whereas it's a little more direct.
Yes.
In other places. I'm sure in New York, they're extremely direct. I've lived in New York and they'll tell you exactly what you need to know right away.
Absolutely.
Now, we talked about the different types of stress. So obviously acute stress, that happens all the time, every day. Everyone experiences acute stress. It's that short burst of stress that you may have before an exam, before a presentation. That is okay. That's healthy stress. We all go through it.
Right, and even if you're at the gym right now, you're experiencing acute stress on your body. It's not as big a deal. It can be very frustrating if the stakes are really high. Imagine you didn't do well on your midterm and it's time for the final exam. Your acute stress can be very high and very difficult because the stakes are your whole grade for the year and things like that. But by and large, you grow a lot better from acute stress.
And then we have chronic stress, which is what we're talking about, that can change basically the structure of the brain. So it really, over time, dealing with that chronic stress over time, it reduces your cognitive function. What does that mean for those people who may not understand?
It means that you start having to make lists because you can't remember as well. It means that you are not as focused or concentrating on things. It also means that you start to have a sense of dread about things. If you are trapped in a job because you feel like I can't get a job anywhere else and you hate it, just getting up in the morning and going to work time and time again, all of a sudden is just really, really taxing on the system.
So that change that happens, especially when we talk about childhood stress. So you're talking about a lifetime that could be impacted. Memory, executive function, emotional regulation could all be impacted. So we really need to be learning positive ways to deal with stress and manage it and prevent it, or be able to deal with it as best as possible. As
best as possible, because some of the negative coping things like substance misuse takes away your executive function. You know, people wonder, like after a DUI or something, what were you thinking? Well, see, the problem was when you take alcohol into your system, the first thing that goes to sleep is your thinking. And so you can't make good decisions. That part of your brain has been anesthetized.
And that chronic stress can really impact your life, your everyday life. So you really have to be understanding that it could basically your feelings of fear, anger, sadness, worry, numbness, or frustration. You're dealing with changes in appetite, energy, desires, and interests, trouble concentrating and making decisions, nightmares or trouble sleeping. We hear a lot about people who have trouble sleeping, and we talk about the importance of getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep as an adult. And so if you're struggling to sleep, that is impacting your physical health.
You know, for most patients at our hospital, that's one of the first things that the psychiatrists prescribe is something to help them sleep and just catch up on some of the rest that they've lost.
And then when we talk about the causes of stress, so there are a lot of different causes of, especially stress, but chronic stress as well. So if you're dealing with financial issues, and especially right now with gas prices are higher, you're starting to see your salary hasn't changed, but your price of gasoline and your commute is now more expensive. So that could definitely lead to some issues. Death of a loved one, so losing someone that was in your life for a long period of time and not having them anymore can be extremely stressful.
And the death of a loved one is kind of an odd thing because you have the acute stress in the immediate part of it. But as you're trying to learn to live your life without that person, it becomes more chronic. You know, I still sometimes want to leave, when I'm leaving work, I want to call my mom, and she's been gone for 9 years, you know. You still have those kinds of things. But the acute part of it, immediately, now what? Because it's generally not a thing that we're prepared for, but then now we have to adapt, and that's very difficult.
We also have relationship problems, so you hear that a lot. Teenagers dating and that stress, especially when relationships are new to a person. So we're talking about adolescents who may be dating for the first time, falling in love for the first time. Those feelings are great, that euphoria, but then if it doesn't go well, you know, it can definitely impact a person's life.
Right, and for girls at the hospital, we see teenage girls from 13 to 17. Oftentimes a trigger to the problem they came in is discord in their relationship. Their boyfriend has left them, or they're fighting or something like that.
Another big source of stress is health issues, which here we are talking about the impact of stress and how it can impact your health, but being diagnosed with a chronic condition like diabetes or high blood pressure, and the pressure of making sure you manage and control it can be really stressful for people.
Right, because it's a very big change in your lifestyle and everything else. And so when I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, my thought was, this is a tragedy. This is, completely the opposite of the way I'd lived my life before then. And then, yes, you do have to manage it. Attached to that is that a lot of times you have some kind of a hovering loved one that's always going to ask you, hey, what's your blood sugar? Hey, have you been to the doctor, and stuff like that? And you really get tired of being asked these questions all the time. And so that can be frustrating as well. And, when you get into your late 40s and beyond, you run higher risk of heart attack and things like that. And all of a sudden, the people that are around you are very overprotective of you because they don't want to lose you. But, it can be kind of overwhelming, and it's like, I'm all right, I'm okay.
Mm-hmm. And then we've talked about work-related pressures, significant life changes we've talked about, and exposure to traumatic events, which you had also talked about. If you're exposed to trauma as a child, as an adult, and how that trauma can also impact you.
We oftentimes have an idea of how the world is supposed to work. And then when we see that up close and personal, it changes the way that we see the world, and it makes us question how the world really works. And especially if there is some sort of trauma between a mother and child, that is especially damaging, and everything else. Father and child, also bad, but mother and child, just because of the way that we've defined that role as a society, man, that can really tear somebody apart for a long, long time.
Now, when I was looking online, I was researching all about stress to ask you questions and make sure I was prepared. And I found this stress continuum, and it had on one side here, I'll hold it up for you here. So on one side, it has performance and how it shoots up, and your stress level, and it goes out. And you have a green zone, a yellow zone, and a red zone. And it tells you like your peak performance. So just to kind of explain, so when it comes to the continuum, a low to moderate level of stress can be productive, which we talked about.
Yes.
A little bit of stress helps you kind of give you that edge to get through a presentation, whatever it may be. Peak performance is when someone is at their very best. So figuring out where your peak performance is, I think when dealing with stress is, okay, how much stress can I handle? What's healthy for me? And how can I use that to my advantage, right? Is that basically the premise? And
it's also seeing where your limits, where your abilities end.
Yes.
There are some people that try and take on a challenge or a project or something like that they just can't do. And sometimes they get trapped in it because they really want to accomplish this, but it's beyond their capabilities, and it's a goal that's unattainable. You need to get rid of that.
So know your limits,
yes,
and know what your peak performance is. Now, the yellow zone of the stress continuum represents the point of diminishing returns, which means that now you're starting to see that all of that stress you're putting into it isn't giving you back what you need. And then too much stress, or stress carried for too long, can push someone into the orange or red zone, which obviously means it's somebody who goes in, I'm going to do this, and then isn't doing well. And you've seen it. I'm sure I've seen it at work, where somebody comes in and they're really excited about something, and then they try to tackle it, and you see them just wane completely because they couldn't live up to the stress.
Right, and so there are a lot of places where if you go in for a new job and you have the description, the interview, the training, but when you actually try and do the job, it's like, whoa, this isn't for me. This isn't what I expected, and they're out the door.
Yeah. And we talked about the effects of stress. So obviously there's a lot of physical effects. What are some of the most common symptoms that you hear from your patients when they're talking about the physical effects of stress that they're experiencing?
When it bleeds into causing anxiety, you can have chest pains and problems breathing and things like rapid pulse. More commonly, though, is a change in your appetite and a change in your sleep pattern. Those two things are indicative of depression oftentimes, and sometimes anxiety.
Because I hear a lot of people get the stress headache.
Yes.
or a stress rash.
Mm-hmm.
So those you can also sort of experience some of the physical outliers when it comes to the stress itself.
Right, and also the gastrointestinal problem. You start to get stomach aches all the time, and you just don't feel like you can eat normal food. When I'm very stressed, I'm back into something like white rice and pancakes, because anything with any grease in it is just like, no, can't do it, right?
Mm-hmm. Now, what is a panic attack, and how does that correlate with stress?
Okay, a panic attack is a discrete attack. It lasts generally 2 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
They feel like they last a lifetime. And what happens is that you have a lot of physical symptoms. My chest is pounding, I can't breathe, my pulse is racing, I can't talk. And you feel like oftentimes you're having a severe heart attack, or you're going to die. There's this thought in your head, this is killing me. Mm-hmm. And you feel like you can't do anything in the moment, and you're locked up. Okay? They are really severe. And when you've had a panic attack. It's not like, there's some people that say, I might have had a heart attack. I don't know. No, a panic attack is absolute. You've got one. It's caused by panic disorder. It's not really stress-induced. I think theoretically you could stress somebody enough to induce one, but by and large, it's a separate thing.
Okay.
But it's usually treated with medication. It's one of the reasons that anxiety is so expensive on our healthcare system, mm-hmm. is because you feel like you're dying, and so you go to the emergency room. And when they don't find anything wrong, that's what they say. It was anxiety, you had a panic attack. Mm-hmm. It's like that, but it really feels like you're dying. It's an awful place to be.
So when it comes to diagnosing chronic stress, so mm-hmm. you're talking to a patient, you're determining their levels of stress, what it may be, how do you diagnose chronic stress? It seems easy to just say like, oh, I match, but is there like a checkbox, a list that you're looking through? No,
see, chronic stress, it's not a disorder. You don't diagnose it. We all have chronic stress. The truth is really, some of us deal with it better than others because of the way we learn to cope with this stress. Mm-hmm. And sometimes with the positions that we put ourselves in. There are some people that are very confident and comfortable walking away from a job. There are others of us that feel, nope, I'm going to be staying here until I've got something else. So.
Yeah. Now let's talk about treatments for stress when it comes to it. So cognitive behavioral therapy is something that we hear a lot about. So just having a counselor, someone to talk to.
Right. And so what you're really doing, and there's a whole lot of different therapies in talk therapy, is that part of it is reframing the way that you feel. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes the person feels like they can't cope, when actually there are several things that they do every day that prove that they can cope. I had a client not too long ago that felt like he was a pushover, but he had talked about a couple of instances in his life where he had said no. And I said, that shows strength and that shows courage. So you have to point out where things are going well, but you also have to teach them new ways to cope with some mm-hmm. things, and look at what I did in this situation, how could I have done this differently, and what do I want to try? Mm-hmm. A lot of it is about problem solving.
So talk therapy, as much as, and I know it is very common on the West Coast in California, people talk about their therapy all the time. Mm-hmm. And so I know in the Rio Grande Valley, there's still a bit of a stigma associated with talk therapy and saying that you see a therapist, but it really does identify and help you change negative thought patterns and behaviors ultimately.
And some of that is changing basically because of the internet, because over the generation now, people have sought help online and everything else, and it's become less stigmatized. And with things like TikTok and Facebook and Instagram, it's becoming more accepted. It's less accepted inside the family unit and everything else. And I have dealt with teenagers whose parents really didn't want them in therapy and wanted them, just to get an evaluation, just to solve a problem and then move on. Mm-hmm. But therapy is one of those kinds of things where you may have to try several therapists, because not all therapists are strong, not all of them are a good match for you, and so sometimes you have to look and find one that fits.
And then there's also stress management techniques. So obviously that includes relaxation, mindfulness, meditation, deep breathing exercises. So just learning how to tackle that stress in the moment. Deep breathing can go a long way in helping sort of reduce your stress level.
Deep breathing is important in all kinds of stress. In our brain, our emotions run much faster than our thoughts do. That's why we say and do stupid things when we're angry. And so sometimes just taking that first one-time deep breath allows your thoughts to catch up with your emotion and can prevent you from saying something that will cause problems in the future. But also it does relax you and does allow you to feel like you're more in control of the situation. There are a whole lot of mindfulness techniques available to you. I recommend a website called insighttimer.com.
Insighttimer.com.
Yes, it has a paid platform, it has a free platform. Use the free one. There are mindful meditations on there, there are body scans, there are progressive visualizations. There's a whole lot of these techniques that you can use. Some of them, 2 to 3 minutes is all that you need.
And it's crazy when you think about the simplicity of deep breathing, but I have gone snorkeling many a time, and I'm not the best when it comes to swimming. I get really nervous. I don't like to be in the ocean. I'm afraid of sharks. But you can actually, with snorkeling and when you're underwater and you're listening, you can hear your breathing. You can hear how fast you're going. So you know when you're sort of stressed and when you're calm. So it's really taking note of your breathing and just how quickly or slowly you're moving through.
The other thing it can do is reset you into the present. Sometimes we are too stressed about things that aren't here yet. You know, if you're having the family over for Easter dinner, you know, you could be panicking right now, but you know what? There are things we need to take care of right now, and so you're just trying to reorient yourself to the present.
Is there any sort of relationship between stress and eating disorders?
You know, a lot of eating disorders can start that way, but that's oversimplification and everything else. A lot of the eating disorders, we have a sort of a delusion about how we look and how the world sees us. That's the very kernel of it, but there's a whole lot of steps in between.
All right, so when we talk about making sure that we are protecting our health and that we are staying as stress-free as possible, we always talk about lifestyle and physical health. So that means exercising daily, and exercise really goes a long way in helping us stay healthy overall.
It can, but it's also the chemicals that are produced when we exercise at a high enough level that can help us relax quite a bit. On the eating front, though, the one that stress is going to contribute to more is actually obesity. Yeah, we're going to stress eat, as everybody knows how that goes. And
with obesity, if you're not sleeping well, that also causes you to gain weight. So there's a lot you really need to be thinking about when it comes to weight and stress.
And then you become at higher risk for other chronic conditions, yes.
And then prioritizing sleep. We can't stress it enough. You need to be doing everything you can to get a good night's rest.
Right, and if you want to try like a progressive relaxation or a sleep hypnosis video that you can get on Insight Timer or even YouTube, just make sure that you limit it to 20 minutes at the maximum. There are some that are 8 and 12 hours long.
Oh, wow.
That's insane. But the thing is, it's only supposed to help you get to sleep. If you run one of these 8-hour things, your body may be resting, but your brain isn't. It's still listening.
Yes.
So you just want a short one just to help you settle down and just kind of drift off to sleep.
And eating well is also really important. Making sure that you're having a balanced, nutritious diet will help you maintain energy levels and reduce the physical effects of stress. So a healthy diet is really important.
And there's also, that's a very good way to learn new things, is to cook for yourself. You do get a sense of accomplishment from it sometimes. And you also find out what I like and what is rewarding to me. You know, sometimes, you know, an anniversary, we're rewarding ourselves for another year together, and we go someplace nice to eat. It really is a reward, and so it's that kind of a thing.
Now, we talked about practicing mindfulness, practicing gratitude. You talked about gratitude and how Thanksgiving seems to be a moment when we really do practice it, but figuring out a way to make that a year-round affair, that we're doing this year-round, making sure that we're practicing gratitude. And I like that you talked about the small steps, that you went from a D to a C. And people always think if I get a C, that's still bad, but you've improved. So looking at all those the baby steps that you're taking along the way to get to where you need to be and notching those wins is nice.
And in that process, you have to pay attention to what's working for me and what's not working for me. Because if it's not working, you know, if you are studying something in school that you really I'm not engaged in it, then maybe I'm in the wrong field and I need to change my major, something like that. But also if you're studying techniques or processes at work and things just aren't getting done, you need to examine the process and see about changing that. Maybe that's the problem and not you.
And I appreciate it that you talked about the techniques to change perspective. So accepting your control limits, what you can't do. You may not be able to accomplish more than 5 things on the to-do list. So why stress yourself out by adding 10 more things on that list?
Right, and you know, a lot of times we'll have people that will talk about what their boyfriend does, what their husband does, what their girlfriend does, that drives them crazy. And it's like, you know what? You can't make them change. You have to work on the changes that you can make.
And we talk about reframing, and you talked about reframing problems and basically approaching challenges with a positive attitude, because I know we have a habit of turning right away to the negative of something and not really looking at the positive.
Right. You know, if you have a child that gets a poor grade on their exam, it's very easy for them to say, you know what, I'm just stupid. The problem may have been with the instruction. It may have been with the way the test was constructed. It may have nothing to do with the child. You can't personalize that. You have to look and see, what can I do differently now to try and improve.
Some other great tips are to set realistic goals. So we always talk about goals being SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. If I remember that from
there you go.
You also have to develop time management skills, and I know that's one that can be a little stressful for people, to just understand how much time it takes to do projects and really mastering that time management. But Rome wasn't built in a day, so just take it one day at a time and work towards developing those skills that will help you better understand your stress levels and how you can combat them. And
sometimes it's even as basic as your route. The thing that always drives us crazy is the trip wherever we're going, especially with the way traffic is getting more and more in the valley and everything else. And so sometimes you have to try a different route. You have to try a different time or something like that. You know, you don't want to go to H-E-B at 1 o'clock on a Sunday. You're asking for problems there.
Exactly.
Right? So it's just trying new things to help us save just a little bit of time there. And we have to be oriented to what works for us.
It's funny that you say that, because when I lived in Los Angeles, people always said the 405 is not your friend. Don't take the 405. And so I would have to drive down to Southern California for work, and I would leave at a different time. I knew, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to stop here, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to grab lunch there. So I would leave at times that weren't during rush hour or during those peak times, just to avoid the stress of stressing myself out. Like, you know, and so it is about just making those little changes to protect your health.
Right, and you have to know which way to go and which way to avoid. And you have to know also that there are people in other vehicles out there who are very stressed and trying to get somebody much faster than you are. And sometimes you have to try and give them grace.
So when should you seek medical help for stress?
When things start to feel overwhelming. You can always seek an assessment just to see how you're doing, and you can have a free assessment at the hospital, or you can see a therapist just for an assessment or consultation and see, all right, where do I stand right now? What do I need? That's always should be the question. What do you need right now? And if you feel you need to talk to somebody, if you feel maybe I should talk to somebody, if I feel, there's a chance I need to talk to somebody, you need to talk to somebody. If you're even thinking about it, just talk to somebody. And sometimes it's just level setting and saying, okay, here's where we are. What do you need? And we'll make these little adjustments and then we'll move on.
And when should you seek emergency help?
When you are thinking about hurting yourself, hurting someone else, when your drug use is out of control and you're putting yourself at risk, and this is kind of a tricky thing to describe, when you are lashing out physically against somebody else and you feel like you aren't controlling it, it's part of an illness, not because I'm committing a criminal act. And that's kind of hard to separate sometimes. Or when you start to be unable to take care of yourself, that's when you really need to seek emergency care.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Bob. We really appreciate it.
Anytime.
All right. And that officially concludes our webinar. Thank you for joining us. We hope you'll continue to prioritize your mental health as well as the mental health of your loved ones. If you're experiencing a mental health challenge, STHS Behavioral is here to help. For more than 30 years, the facility has proudly served the South Texas community, offering both inpatient and outpatient treatment options. If you or a loved one is facing a mental health concern, you can call to schedule a confidential assessment by calling 388-1300. And please remember, you are not alone. Talk with a loved one or seek professional help whenever you need emotional or mental health assistance. And if you are experiencing a mental health crisis, please call the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988. Licensed counselors are available to speak with you in English and Spanish 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, don't miss the next installment of this Let's Talk Mental Health series on Thursday, May 7th, broadcast live at 5:30 p.m. via Facebook as we discuss cognitive behavioral therapy. We hope you can join us. And to watch our previous Let's Talk seminars, all you have to do is visit sthsletstalk.com. Until our next webinar, stay healthy, stay safe, and please continue to prioritize your mental well-being. Sometimes life's burdens can take their toll on your emotional well-being. If you or a loved one is struggling, know that you are not alone. South Texas Health System Behavioral can help you cope with depression, manage feelings of anxiety, regain control of mood swings, and recover from substance use disorders. Our staff is available 24/7, offering the quality and compassionate inpatient and outpatient care you need to overcome life's challenges. South Texas Health System Behavioral, where your mental health is our priority.